Oh, it's that time of the year where we need to start talking some NBA draft conversation. When was the last time the Sixers had a meaningful NBA draft? Was it Maxey in 2020 when it was later in the year? I don't know, but this one is kind of important for a lot of different reasons.
Jaden Springer's shade going on over here.
A little bit. Sorry, Jaden.
Hey, David Roddy's illustrious Sixers career is up there with Frank Gore's Eagles career.
Yes.
And Devontae Parker's Eagles career.
There you go. Welcome to the PHLY Sixers podcast on a Monday, 9 days away from the start of the 2024 NBA draft, and that has got here pretty quickly as we sit here on June 17th. The NBA draft begins on the 26th. We'll tell you about that a little bit more, where you can hang out with us. We'll talk about that a little bit later on Wednesday for the first round. Don't forget, folks, 2 rounds this year, as always, but on different days, Wednesday and Thursday. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And for us, we begin with the guards. The 76ers have 4 players on the roster, 1 guard, and that is Tyrese Maxey as we begin this conversation. So with the 16th pick in the first round, if the Sixers keep it, we've been saying that, if they keep it, Kyle and Derek have been talking about it, the chances of them moving it a little bit higher than just above 50%. So with that, we do want to make sure that we say that at the very top, that, hey, there's a very good chance that they trade it. If they don't and they keep the pick, and we sit here and talk about guards today, are there some guards out there at pick number 16 that you may like, that you paid attention to college basketball, you saw the work that they did on the collegiate level that will then translate to the pro level and specifically for your Philadelphia 76ers? And with the other part of that, if we're talking guard help, where do any of these players maybe fit in with Tyrese Maxey? So we begin there. There are a lot of guys to talk about. But before I start to throw out some names to the guys, just some overall discussions. Of course, the introduction of the show. Kyle, the guards, how do you feel about the guards in general when it comes to overlooking the entire NBA draft?
I feel okay about them in general in a vacuum if you remove the Sixers specific fits. I think the big problem for me is trying to project, I'd say, the vast majority of them next to Tyrese Maxey. The guys who feel like good defensive fits potentially come with offensive warts, and the guys who are like, oh, that guy's got a live dribble. He's, someone who can get his own shot and do the stuff that we've talked about on the show. They're all like 6'1", 6'2", and don't have the greatest athletic profiles. And so we'll get to my guy that I'm probably going to stump for, that I don't actually suspect that they'll take if they hang out there. But yeah, it's a lot of players in a bit of a similar bucket as Maxey, where they're in that 6'1" to 6'3" range. Their primary skill is scoring. They can shoot the ball, but I don't love the idea of, okay, pick 16 is a guy that you basically will never be able to play with Tyrese, or it's a low odds proposition that they'll be able to play with Tyrese. So like the players, don't love a lot of the fits.
Derek, what do you think?
Yeah, and I mean, look, for this one, you can't draft someone who can't fit next to Tyrese Maxey. Like that'll cross them off the list. This is a guy in Maxey who is obviously very young, about to be given a max contract to, going to be with the organization for a long time. I don't know why I say organization like I cover hockey all of a sudden. I didn't pronounce it correctly. I won't even try to do that. But you
start talking about lower body injuries and upper body injuries.
With the Sixers, they do sometimes talk about that as well. But in Joel Embiid's case, you might be able to talk yourself into like, oh, well, I want this backup center who will only play backup center, and you're okay with that. With a guard, in order to justify that draft slot, you have to be able to be on the court alongside of Tyrese Maxey. In part because Tyrese Maxey it's easier to play him more minutes. He's probably going to play more games. But also in part because in order for a guard to have that kind of value, he has to be able to play both on and off ball. And it does make it tough in this spot. Like I said, a lot of these players will check some boxes, but they might not be able to play next to Tyrese Maxey, or maybe they'll have the size to play next to Maxey, but you're not necessarily confident in their offensive skill set. So that will be a big part of today's topic, more so than obviously like we will have another day here devoted to wings, another day devoted to big men. This is probably the one where fit comes into question the most.
So as you guys both say that, I'll just throw it quickly before we get to a name. DeAnthony Melton, 6'3", campaign somewhere in that 6'1", 6'2"
Right.
range. Of course, the 6'1", 6'2" range for campaign was more because of the fact that Nick Nurse didn't have a lot of options at the end of the season. He had to throw him out there. Same thing with Patrick Beverley. So we have seen Tyrese Maxey play with some smaller in stature guys, similar to what we're talking about here. But ideally, if you're looking at a draft position, you go in a different direction.
Yeah, and the difference in this scenario between DeAnthony Melton, 6'3", but pretty solidly built with long arms, versus Campaign, who's pretty much unplayable next to Maxey in the playoffs, even though he does have that live dribble, even though he does have that creation, even though he does have that shot, that size pretty much, look, did they play him? Yeah, because they were desperate, but it was far from ideal. You can't draft and try to develop someone with that kind of physical profile, I don't think.
So you brought up Melton. It might be a good segue to talk about Devin Carter.
That's what we were going to start.
Because he has almost identical measurables as Melton coming out of college. Basically the same height, I believe within a pound weight-wise, and the wingspan is basically the same. So they are, for all intents and purposes, if you're looking at them or looking at Carter from a defensive perspective, you would look at him same general, I'd say, downside as Melton as a defender, but he was a terrific defensive player in college.
Yep.
Someone that I think what impressed me the most with Devin Carter, going back recently and rewatching a bunch of stuff, is less the point of attack stuff. And I do think the point of attack stuff is good, and more how he operates away from the ball.
Yeah.
I think his biggest strength defensively is being able to be a disruptive ball hawk type of defender, but rarely feeling like he was someone that he's going off script or he's letting his man get open shots or back cut him. And another thing I really liked watching him on film, he timed his weak side help awesome all throughout the season. Like a lot of times he would bring the late double, and whether it's, poking the ball away for a steal, coming in for a block around the rim as the second man in, he was really good at sensing opportunities to, guys blindsided, which we've seen this with Joel Embiid quite a bit. He's got his back to the basket, defender on his hip, and Carter was great at coming out of nowhere and just balls going the other way and then getting out in transition and making stuff happen there. So I think in terms of the defensive profile, he is by far the best guy in this group in terms of what would work next to Tyrese Maxey. I am concerned about how he scales up. Like, I don't know how many wings he'll be able to defend at his size. And I also think that's a lesser concern than, I don't love his screen navigation. I thought there were a lot of times he's getting bumped off by players, and he was able to recover a decent amount at the college level. I don't think he's going to have the same amount of time to actually get back in the picture. The good news is he's an incredible athlete.
Yep.
Like, he just broke the 3/4 court sprint record at the combine. So if he does get rubbed off on these screens, he has the pure quickness, speed, acceleration to get back in the picture and make a play. But that's one of the only concerns I have with him defensively. Everything else I thought was awesome.
No, defensively, he's a very projectable defender. And even, like you mentioned, whether or not he can defend wings, he's obviously only 6'3", but he had a 6'9" wingspan, pretty good strength. I think he has a chance to defend certainly 2 threes, maybe not 3 4s.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about a 3-position defender, and I have pretty good confidence in both his on-ball and, like Kyle mentioned, off-ball, averaged over a block a game, averaged almost 9 rebounds per game. Like,
he's one of the best guard
effort.
rebounders there is, yeah.
Really good off-ball defender. Can probably improve in terms of getting through screens, but I think he has the physical tools to do that. I'm very confident in his defense translating, and I think if you believe in his jump shot, which we'll get to in a second, you probably think he's a surefire top 10 pick. And there's a chance he could end up being a top 10 pick. But I think in terms of defense, and if that shot translates, then I do think he is a top 10 prospect. There is some question on that jumper, though. Like, his first 2 years in college, shot 29% from three-point range, only shot 70% as a free throw shooter, which is solid, but not enough to give you necessarily confidence that the jumper is going to come around. If you watch the shot, it's a slow release. It's a little bit of a funky release. I think that has thrown some people off. He did shoot really well this year. 37.7% on almost 7 threes per game, up the free throws to 75%. Pretty good off the catch. I think he had like a 40% raw, which is like a 60% effective when you factor in a lot of those are threes. Made a lot of improvement. there are some people who question that. And I do have on the one hand, like I said, there are reasons that I would be skeptical, including how it looks. Some misses can vary pretty wildly left to right. But he has some shot diversity to it. It's not just all catch and shoot. Like, he can come off of a screen sometimes. He can dribble off of a pick sometimes. I think there's some hope that, and I think maybe the best indicator, or at least reason for hope, is that everyone you talk to is he's an exceptionally hard worker.
Yeah.
And players like that who have those kind of tools and work on the jump shot, will it ever be great? I don't know if it'll ever be great. I don't think he'll ever be a primary initiator, in part because of the scoring, but in part because he's not really that kind of a guard. He's not that kind of distributor and playmaker. But I think his jump shot will improve enough to be playable. And if he's playable and solid as a jump shooter, then I think the defense is enough that I think he'll be a contributor on a lot of good teams. But I also don't think he's going to be here at 16. Even
with all that, his stock has risen, though, as you talk about that. And
there are a lot of rumors that he got a promise somewhere in the lottery.
Right. So with all of that, and you look at where he is in, as much as we talk about younger players where guys are being drafted from overseas or freshmen out of school, this guy is an upperclassman, and he has gotten better every year. And when you also see someone like Tyrese Halliburton with his shooting, and we've seen so many over the course of the years that have these weird types of the shot releases that they have where they are definitely being questioned. And when guys like that do succeed in the league, though, some of that stuff just kind of goes away, especially when you do have the reputation of being a hard worker. You're not settling for anything. You're definitely trying to improve and get better at so many different aspects of your game. That stuff may still come into play. And again, as you said, there may have been some information out there about him moving up quickly because he had some sort of information from the league that he is somewhere in a certain range for a promise.
I will say, though, like you bring up Halliburton, I think that's a natural place to go when you talk about just a funky shot. Mm-hmm. Halliburton had more of a track record of actually making shots in college than Carter does. Carter, like I said, really bad the first 2 years, turned it around here the last one. Sure. Halliburton was a pretty good shooter for Iowa State right from the jump. But I think it's fair in the fact that you can get lost sometimes in how a shot looks and overlook the fact that it goes in the basket.
Sean Marion was my favorite example.
Kevin Martin was also really, really weird.
Yep.
But what was he known for? Scoring and shooting. And that's what he did.
So I would say this. The reason that I would scrutinize his shot a lot is because if he doesn't shoot, I'm pretty worried about the rest of it. Like, I don't think he can go left basically at all.
Yeah.
And if you can funnel a guy to one hand and he's a questionable shooter, then that becomes like, this guy doesn't really have a reasonable path to being a productive offensive player. So like, it's when you bundle it all together. Like if he was the ball handler that like a Rob Dillingham is, or he had better, I don't know, ability to beat somebody off a closeout, whatever it is, but I don't see a ton there that it relies a lot on the shot. Now, the good news that Derek brought up the volume, he's confident enough in the shot that the 3-point volume has gone up and up and up as the efficiency has improved. And I do think that like it's when you bring in the work ethic stuff that you've heard from people, you see that there's been this constant upward trajectory, and you say now it's in a place where he's coming off movement. He'll take some pull-up threes. It can be a catch and shoot guy. Like, that stuff is compelling. So if he does shoot, you can certainly see the path to him becoming like a starter level player. And that's why I think teams are entertaining him in like I think probably as high as 8 to San Antonio, maybe even a little higher than that, depending on how people feel about him. But yeah, I like him, and I like him more than a lot of these guys because of the defensive stuff. But I would be lying to you if I said I wasn't scared about, how the offense is going to turn out.
And sometimes players just get to a level where they're confident, and maybe he just got to that point his junior season that he was very confident in that shot. As we look at it, though, before we get to our next name, looking at him at 16, if he were there, again, beginning of all this, he was around that range. And one of the reasons why you wrote about him at allphly.com. If you missed that, go check out Kyle's piece at allphly.com. And writing about Devin Carter is one of the early pieces as we get ready for the draft. Do you see him translating into that starter type, though, as we compare him to Melton, looking at the offense maybe being a question, but the defenses could be so good that some teams might project him as that.
Yeah, and look, that's so if you come in and can defend, and I think he's a rare young guy who will come in and he'll have some level of defensive value right away. That gives you a path to playing time.
Yes.
That is always helpful with a lot of these guys we're going to talk about are one-sided type players.
Yep.
And so if you're, Rob Dillingham, for example, and your shot's not falling, you're getting stuck on the bench, especially on a team. This is where situation matters too, right? These guys have to come in and be productive right away, because if not, you're on a team that has a fan base that is complaining that, well, they haven't gotten to the conference finals, and Nick Nurse is not going to spend tons and tons of time on guys who are not helping them win right away. And so Carter, in that respect, has the most clear path to immediate and consistent playing time. I just don't think he'll be there when they end up picking.
Yep. All right, well, we'll get to some more. Maybe we'll start off with Rob Dillingham on the other side since Kyle brought him up. We'll get to him next, but first got to tell you about some people that I'm very familiar with over the past 5 seasons, and they are also presenting our show here today. They are the great people from Rothman Orthopedics. So, as I've mentioned, I am a big supporter of Rothman because...
And they've been a big supporter of you.
Yes, they have. I've torn my ACL and my Achilles in the past 5 years. And where is the place that I have gone? No question about it. It wasn't even a hard decision. I went to Rothman. Joints aching, hands cramping, back out of whack. Well, Rothman's got you at Rothman Orthopedics. Practicing specialized care has been their passion for over 50 years. Their mission, high quality, compassionate, and affordable care rooted in research, and research leading to new treatments and better outcomes as well. Each Rothman doc is laser focused on the specialties that they do have. So you have hip, knee, spine, you name it, they take care of it for you. The team has you covered, each body part right in your backyard. So you can cross over the defense, drain those jump shots, and root for our teams like you do out there. No other fans in the country. They're Rothman Orthopedics, and they specialize in you. So for my knee, right to Dr. Emperor, took care of my knee. It was very, very smooth. Everything was cool. Even when I had some issues later on, I would call him and say, yo, my knee is hurting. What up? Put some ice on it, Devon, and you'll be fine. Okay, cool. That was after the great work that they did. When it came to my Achilles, I don't know if I'm supposed to mention that doctor's name, so I won't mention him. Great doctor, though. My Achilles is all good. I'm 10 months in, and I'm back at it, doing what I love to do and getting back out there on the floor. So if you are like me and you have some of these issues, one of my best friends was just dealing with the problem. I said, hey, man, Rothman Institute, 200-plus fellowship-trained physicians, subspecialize in specific areas of the body in a multitude of orthopedic services, including, again, hip, knees, shoulder, elbow, foot, ankle, hand, wrist, all kinds of sports medicine, physical medicine, and rehabilitation, orthopedic, oncology, trauma, and fracture care. They are the place to go. Rothman Orthopedics specialize in orthopedics, and you visit rothmanortho.com/PHLY to learn more and make an appointment today. And I also have to tell you about BetParx Casino. Not that you need to be betting on me when I'm out there on the floor. It's okay, though. When I get healthy and I'm back out there and I'm right, you can make that bet. But I do want to tell you about some shows that will be at BetParx Casino. August 23rd, Southern Rock of the Marshall Tucker Band, Australian Pink Floyd on September 7th. That's all at BetParx Casino, and a great spot that they are. From the TV show Jersey Shore, if you were a big fan of that show, the It's Happening podcast live with Snooki and Joey. They're coming to Parx Casino on June 28th. How about also being at Parx Casino with all these slots and all that you have there? 3,200, state-of-the-art slots, 115 live table games, a beautiful poker room, state-of-the-art sports book with a 150-foot video wall, plus the ultra-cool X Lounge. So if you want to watch Game 5 tonight and you want to get out of the house, go to BetParx Casino, go to the sports book, watch it on the big, 150-foot video wall, watch some baseball while you're at it as well, and get some food with the dining options that are amazing at Parx Casino's collection of award-winning restaurants. Visit parxcasino.com. That's Parx Casino. This is how you win. Must be 21. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, so as we look at Rob Dillingham now, another player whose name, when the college season ended, the NBA lottery conversation started to really spark up. He was somewhere in that top 7 Even saw him as high as 4 at one point early in the mock draft part of this whole conversation. And Derek, right now, Kentucky, we know that they provide and produce a lot of really good guards. Tyrese Maxey being one of them.
Even when they're hidden.
Even when they're hidden, they have those guys, and they still do have a lot of talented players there. But Dillingham was one. We'll get to one of his backcourt mates a little bit later, but he was one with his explosiveness, all the dribble package that he has, the ability to get to the rim and finish, his creativity, his big outburst in terms of scoring at 6'2", but he has now started to fall. Kyle and I and you and Bree, we were all looking at one of the mock drafts. Now have him falling to the Philadelphia 76ers at pick number 16. That's a big drop.
Well,
Why?
there's still a really wide range. Like I think ESPN still has him in like 6 or 7.
Sure.
So there's still some people who think that he's going to go high. There's still some people and teams who like him, but he's very polarizing. And you brought it up. Measured 6'1", without shoes.
And he's like 164 pounds.
Well, I was going to say, and the key is that he is also a 6'3" in wingspan, and he's really frail thin.
Yeah.
So he does a couple things really well. He shot nearly 50% on catch and shoot jumpers this past year, which is incredible. And I think he has a really good live ball dribble. He's really good at navigating screens.
Very good.
Shooting off the dribble. But he's 6'1" with a 6'3" wingspan and too frail to defend. Like he's one of those players who I can't imagine him succeeding next to Tyrese Maxey. I don't really have much confidence in his ability to add weight, and I'm not really sure how you rectify that. It would be one thing if Tyrese Maxey wasn't as proven as he was, but he's the number 2 guy. Some in the chat would argue co-franchise player. It's a little too far. Joel Embiid will jokingly say franchise player, but Tyrese Maxey is a
Nick
fixture
Batum called
of
him the franchise over the weekend when Tyrese was in Paris, I believe.
Nice to hear that Nico is still thinking of himself somewhat with the Sixers. See whether or not that holds true. But regardless of how you phrase it, Tyrese Maxey is insanely important. I don't think Rob fits at all, which is a shame because I think the offensive tools and skill set is very legitimate.
I think he's a potentially dynamic scorer, and I think if you're the Sixers and you say we just need bench help, like you get to that area of the draft and they don't love anybody there on the wing, or they don't want to take some of these other guys we're talking about who are more undersized shooting guards, then you could convince yourself to take a flyer on Dillingham and say, we have our 6th man. Like this guy could be a Lou Williams type of weapon off of the bench. Like Derek brought up the catch and shoot numbers, but he's dangerous as a pull-up guy. Good live ball dribble. His quickness is going to allow him to get by some guys, which is not true of a fair amount of guys in the guard spots.
We just talked about Carter.
For this class. Yeah, right. Like handle is much better there.
Yep.
I do think I am probably factoring in the Kentucky thing where
they always
so many guys look better in the league than they did at Kentucky, and he looked pretty good offensively. So there's that, and he had a weird high school path as well. He was at Kanye West's like academy high school, right? And then after all the chaos with Kanye over the last few years, he leaves there. He briefly played for Overtime Elite during his senior season, and he was kind of up and down there. And I think that had a dampening impact on how people look at him. So there's a chance you're getting a diamond in the rough and a guy who's going to be one of the more, because like you kind of know what he is, right? You can plug him in pretty immediately and say, we're going to give him the keys to the bench and just kind of let him do his thing. And there's definitely value in that. But to Derek's point, the hope would be at 16 that you can get somebody who can play with Tyrese Maxey, somebody that is like maybe this person is not going to be a star, but somebody with solid starter level upside. Right. And I'm not sure, even in a best case scenario, Dillingham gets there. Now, if he is a Lou Williams level 6th man, I think that's certainly as much value as a token 5th starter can provide. But Lou, I feel like people don't or take for granted how good Lou was at his peak. So I think that'd be a high-end outcome for him. And I'm also like the playmaking is okay, but it's not. Yeah. It's more he's using the scoring to draw attention, and he'll make some of the simple reads. He's not like an especially advanced playmaker at this point.
Yeah.
So making a case for him at 16. The scoring, as you just mentioned, the value that's there for a bench scorer. If he's not going to play with Tyrese Maxey, there will be times, I'm sure, where Nick Nurse will look at it and say, This guy just absolutely has it going. I can put him out there with 2 more wings and Joel Embiid on the back end where I can get away with it, hide him somewhere else. Sure, they'll find him and locate him on the defensive end, but will that take away from what he's doing on the other end? The fact that when we talk about these Kentucky guards and most of them being able to handle, and this guy can handle, when we talk about Devin Carter not being able to go left, Rob Dillingham can go anywhere on the floor, left or right, and he's explosive. The other part is the open space, the more space in the half-court set that he might have versus what he had in the collegiate game. Now, while we know that the head coach and that program gets you ready for the pros, but similar to what we saw with Tyrese Maxey, it takes them to get away from that, get to a pro style of situation in their offense to be able to really showcase who they are in that open floor to do what they need to do and to be that scorer on the offensive end. So I look at that. I look at the transition possibilities with him. As small as he is, he can finish at the rim. He can get up. He can dunk on guys. He's not afraid to challenge people at the rim. That is something that intrigues me because as we talk about them, and not the fact that they just have 4 players on the roster. Let's look at the totality of the roster for what they had. They didn't have anybody like that coming off the bench. No one like that coming. Now, Campaign provided it.
I was going to say, we did see when Campaign had his moments, how much value that provided.
Right, and how important that was, where they may identify that maybe in free agency. Possible. But if they don't, and this is a guy that they look at, not to say that he's going to come in and do it right away from day one. Maybe it's going to take him a few games to get his legs underneath him to provide something like that, and maybe November or December. But there is value in that type of player for the offense to do that. The defense, unquestioned, got all of that. Playing with Tyrese Maxey is going to be very difficult, but the guy can score. And the name of the game also coming off the bench would be to put some points on the board. And if he can do that, there's something to him as being a member of this team.
I am worried. You brought up the finishing. That's where I think the size concerns could play a big factor at the next level. Because when you're 164 pounds at 6'1", you could be great at leading with your shoulder and initiating contact and all that. There are a lot of guys you are going to bounce off of at that level. Yeah. And so the finishing craft is going to be super important for him. He is as far as like touch and tough shots, like you can see the makings of a really impactful game. But that's where I'm worried that he's going to have to figure out ways to, one, put on weight. That there's just no way around. He's not going to be able to carve out a productive career if he's sitting at 164 the rest of his life. That's just not going to work. But
how much do you compare him when you look at him to what Turk Smith, when we talk about Turk and the style of play? Similar in that way of that guy's a scorer. He's explosive. Of course, he went undrafted. We're just talking about the profile overall.
Sort of similar. I feel like Dillingham's got more diversity to his shot making than Turk did.
He's made more shots. Like Turk was always a guy that you looked at and said, like, I think he'll be able to shoot. But this guy,
I don't have much doubt that he's going to shoot at the next level.
All right, let's go to another name. Let's go to the ACC. Let's bring in Jared McCain from Duke, the freshman. 6'3", three-point shooting. We know that's there, Derek.
Yep.
And a guy who he can certainly run the point guard position coming from California, did some decent things at Duke. But, again, another name that you thought would be a little bit higher, but he's somewhere in that range for the Sixers and beyond.
Another guy whose size makes it tough, 6'2", 6'4" wingspan-ish. He can shoot off the dribble. I like that. You can run a pick and roll. He is also
bigger than, so if you're comparing him to Dillingham, for example,
he's thicker.
He's like 200, 203, 205,
I think you can
like
see
that.
Like I think you can get through a screen on the perimeter a little bit defensively, but I think it's going to be limiting next to Maxey for sure. Not really sure he's quite, like I worry a little bit. You talked about Dillingham in terms of at the rim. I'm not sure McCain is going to get to his spots quite as easily. Like the first step just doesn't seem like it's there. I'm a little worried he's going to get swallowed up by NBA level defenders. But I like the shooting. I think he can probably grow a little bit as a creator. I don't think he had all that much responsibility there at Duke, so I think you can see the numbers pop a little more than they have. But I worry about whether or not he's going to be able to get his shot off.
So you mentioned Devon High School, that more of a point guard there. I wonder if being at Duke and being in the role that he was in masked some of his abilities, playmaking, and I struggle to get there all the way just because I don't I don't think he's got all that exciting of a handle, and I think he had trouble getting by guys even at the college level. But to the point about the shooting, I like the one shot that I saw a ton on the tape was he loves taking pull-up threes in transition, like walked into a lot of threes. But on top of that, good, simple, quick mechanics. Yep. So he was good as a relocation shooter, good as an off-ball guy, getting into like somebody gets doubled, someone is, slashing, getting to the rim. He's good at finding that little pocket of space on the perimeter. I also think if we're talking about the defensive side of the ball, he's a better rebounder than a lot of these guys. Like he's got a fairly strong core. And so despite the fact that he's not all that big, he was able to muscle off some bigger guys at Duke. And I think that there's a desire there, both as a rebounder and a defender, that some of these other guys are missing. And I do think that's an important thing. As we were saying with Carter, if you come in right away and the effort is there and the coaching staff sees that, they're going to give you some more rope. And I think his ability to just play that, he spent the whole season just being like an off-ball shooter really for Duke, and that was his primary responsibility. And so if you're a believer in Tyrese Maxey's the point guard, it's a him and Joel-centric world, I think McCain has already shown he can play a role in that off-ball type of thing. I do worry about the athletic limitations. Mm-hmm. I saw someone make this comparison, and I kind of like it, that he's a little Seth Curry-ish in terms of the body, the three-point shooting, and not going to be able to get to the rim consistently. And so the shooting has to bring such a surplus of value. No, I think because of the strength and the rebounding, he's ahead of where Seth was coming out of school as a defensive guy, and he can get through some screens. I also have heard good things on him intangible-wise, like good work ethic, good leader, all that type of stuff that you want from a kid who's going to be coming into a situation with high expectations. Like I don't think he'll be overwhelmed by the idea of trying to compete right away. So I don't love him. I like him. I think he'd be a perfectly fine pick there. I don't think he's unless he has like a Klay Thompson-esque shooting run in the NBA. I think he's got kind of a limited ceiling based on what his weaknesses are.
So the one it's funny because we speak to so many different people, and the one, as you said, one of the knocks that I would hear about him is the locker room stuff.
Really?
Yeah, just a little bit.
Ooh, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, just a little bit of a locker room stuff where he wasn't great in the locker room. So that's something, just a little bit, and maybe that is something that he didn't really have to deal with in the past in high school.
Maybe. And
dealing with this now in college will get him ready for the pros, where that does not become a problem, where he's hearing that type of stuff coming back to his team.
Well, I wonder to the point about, he's a point guard in high school and then he got moved into how much of that is down to he's in a different role than normal, and maybe there's some friction there. But so we'll have to compare some notes and figure out. Yeah. And that's for NBA teams. That's part of the separation in the process, is figuring out the whole piece with the character. Like I always bring up the Malcolm Brogdon example. Had the name, the president. And some people took that as like, oh, he's a leader. He's this.
It was good at Virginia.
It was good at times.
And then when he got to the pros,
it became more of like this guy's a locker room politician, and he's always
the lawyer.
Locker room lawyer is the term that's normally used. So it can go either way, but I guess that's interesting.
But the player though, I do, like you said, I like the player. I don't love him. And when I look at him, you brought up Seth Curry, I would watch him and I'm like, all right, the shooting is that good. But running the team, when he did have the option to run a team, I'm like, that's like Tyus Jones stuff. Kind of like, it's not too explosive. I can run. I'm getting to my spots. I'm not making too many mistakes. I'm getting you where you need to be. I'm making
Frankly,
sure.
if he play makes like Tyus Jones at the next level, I think that's a high end outcome for him based on what we saw at Duke.
The problem is, as Derek said, as he started it, not starting next to Tyrese Maxey is not probably the case. He's coming off the bench. We'll get to. We have a few more guys that we're going to get to, and one in particular that I'm going to start off with Kyle when we get back. But before that, got to talk about some drinks. It's cold out. It's hot outside.
The beverage king of PHLY is back. Listen, guys, you deal with all kinds of day-to-day annoyances in your life, like preparing for the draft and thinking, man, the team that I love is just going to trade this pick anyway. Why am I wasting my time thinking about this and scouting these guys? But look, there's always a better way and a chiller way. So when you wake up and you're annoyed that Daryl Morey is automatically going to make some trades, you can choose chill and then reach for an ice-cold Coors Light. With Coors Light, you know you're getting an ice-cold beer because the mountains turn blue on the bottles and cans when they hit that perfect temperature. There was no real need to go out of my way to choose chill this weekend, thankfully, in part because I ended up running into Devon Givens while we were celebrating Father's Day yesterday. I was out with my dad. Devon was out with one of his kids. Ran into one another, had a nice, pleasant, Sunday surprise.
Yeah.
I was already in that chill mind state. So, when we went to our next location to have a beverage, I had already chosen chill, and I could reach for a cold layered, cold filtered, cold packaged beer with a smooth finish and get that mountain cold refreshment. So when you choose to rise above it all, choose chill, choose Coors Light, get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/PHLY basketball. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. And by the way, if you heard some cans being cracked on the other side of the set, I know you can see them next to Devon. I think Derek's is out of the shot right now. You guys know our good friends at Olipop, a new kind of soda with only 2 to 5 grams of sugar,
here?
9 grams of fiber per can.
Strawberry vanilla.
Listen, their most recent launch at all Wawa stores, Olipop has the classic root beer or a strawberry vanilla at a Wawa near you. But it's also available online in almost 30,000 retailers nationwide with plenty of classic flavors beyond that strawberry vanilla and root beer, like the vintage cola, orange squeeze, classic grape, which is a PHLY favorite, cream soda, cherry cola, ginger ale. I feel like I'm hearing from people all the time about new flavors that are, wow, I saw this one in the wild. I'm going to try it. So there's always that variety out there for you. And you can know going in, if you've been a big soda drinker and you're worried about your health as you get older, thinking about your diet, your gut, your teeth, whatever it is, you can get the great taste of soda, that satisfying feeling when you're having a nice meal, something to pair it with, maybe even a mixer for a nice alcoholic beverage. Olipop is there for you with much less sugar, 2 to 5 grams of sugar from natural sources, no added sugar in all their cans. So you can use the code PHLY20 for 20% off of your next Olipop order. Discount only applies to one-time orders, not to subscriptions. Olipop is sold online at drinkolipop.com and on Amazon, and it's available in almost 30,000 retailers nationwide, including Wawa, Target, Sprouts, Wegmans, ShopRite, and Go Puff. And I see Winona in the chat. Watermelon lime. Big ups to the watermelon lime. I love that one. It's a nice, refreshing summertime. I have not tried this yet. I bet you that's great with an adult beverage.
Must be.
All
right, let me also tell everybody out there, we're talking NBA draft here. We'll get to a couple more names here as we hang out with you. We got to talk about the fact that we're going to have a draft party next week on Wednesday, June 26th. Oh, yeah, baby. Time, that is 8 p.m. So come hang out with us. Derek Bodner, Kyle Neubeck, Devon Givens, Rich Hoffman will be there with us as well. Brianna will be there. You get to see Bree live there on the set. We're at Garage Fishtown.
And if you see that graphic that our great producer Bree put up there, opening night ticket giveaway for people who show up to Garage. So if you want to see the new look Sixers beginning of next season, great opportunity to come through and win some free tickets.
Look at that. And it's all presented by our good friends from Coors Light and Rothman. As we spoke about them, Rothman
Devon will be wearing his brace in celebration.
I will bring my brace if you want me to. If you're going to show up and you say, I'll be there if you bring your brace, my ACL brace, I will bring it just for that very reason. So come on, hang out with us. June 26th, 8 p.m. Hang out with us around 7:30. We can talk to you guys about everything before we get started. Some memorabilia will be there. We'll give away some of that, PHLY apparel as well. We have all of that for you live from Garage in Fishtown, and it should be a fun time, especially if the Philadelphia 76ers keep the pick or trade it like they did with David Roddy and moving him, getting DeAnthony Melton. Maybe they keep it, though, at 16 and they go out west
Start playing
out
that
west.
I Will Remember You song for David Roddy.
When he comes to town. Where's he at now? Where
Memphis.
Did he get traded? No, he got traded.
Did he?
Yeah. What deal was that? It wasn't was that Portland that he went to?
I completely memory hold that.
It might have been. No,
he's on the Suns.
Suns.
Yeah.
That's where it is. Okay.
I completely forgot about that.
Yeah, he got traded at the deadline. All right.
That shows you how much attention I was paying to Memphis
they were bad
at the deadline.
They were really bad. All right, let's go out west now and check in with one of the guys I think we all like, but one of us likes him a lot. USC.
Oh, yeah, baby.
Bronny James.
No. You thought.
Isaiah Collier. Kyle, I'm going to start off with you.
Okay, so the base for the case is that while a lot of these guys profile, it's like Dillingham, for example. The upside on him is maybe he could be a Lou Williams. That's a valuable player. Devin Carter is like good defender, but he's going to be a limited offensive player. Mm-hmm. McCain, I don't really trust as a on-ball playmaking type. I think Collier, and there's a reason he was in that number one pick conversation at one point.
Yeah.
I think there's a chance you could be buying low on a guy with one of the best upside cases in the draft. I think great quickness, great downhill ability. Something I really love in college guards is seeing guys who get to the free throw line a lot. Mm-hmm. And he shot almost 6 free throw attempts a game. Let's ignore that he shot like 67% on those free throws, which is a really bad indicator. But I think if you look at his ability to use his strength that he has, I think his measurements ended up being disappointing. He was listed at 6'5" at USC. He was only like 6'2", maybe a little under 6'3" at the combine, I believe.
6 foot 6'2.5". Yeah, with a 6'5".
Let's say 6'3.5" in shoes is probably around where he settles. So that was disappointing. But I think his ability to use his strength as a driver, where he hits first, knocks the guy back, mm-hmm. and can finish. Or even when he's in a spin move, he's good at using his body to kind of move off of that guy and go by them. And on top of that, I think he's got legitimate playmaking upside as a live dribble guy. Showed a lot of creativity on dump offs, drop offs, finding guys, doing the Steve Nash under the baseline,
probing the
pass out, doing all that. It really all rests on, can he shoot, and how bad are his his turnover issues moving forward. So the shooting problem is the one that's a bigger deal for the Sixers, right? The free throw indicator would scare me quite a bit. If I'm Daryl Morey and I'm like, look, I believe this guy could bring some of the playmaking that they don't have with Maxey, but unfortunately, if he doesn't shoot, I think a lot of his problems get compounded, because a lot of those turnovers that I saw watching him play where he dribbled into traffic and he's trying to play really fast, and he's either, he's running into somebody, he's throwing a pass that it just isn't there. And a lot of it stems from he's abandoning shots that maybe he should take. But if you're talking about between the downhill attacking ability, he's hitting more skip passes than most of these guys. He's got functional strength as a driver. The change of pace is great. If he can get there as a shooter, I think he's got some of the best upside of anybody in this class. And if you're talking about at 16, I personally, if they're keeping the pick, I would rather shoot for a high-end outcome than take a guy who's like, yeah, he's okay, but is probably going to be like a low-end rotation player. And that's kind of my philosophy with a team that, frankly, has traded away a bunch of picks and will likely trade away more in the future. I would like to take the home run.
He's the kind of guy where if you squint hard enough, he could be a well-rounded player. You can see a little bit of creation. If you buy this shot, he certainly has a driving game, solidly built. So even though he doesn't have the measurables that maybe a lot of people are looking for, he can at least contribute defensively. but you kind of have to squint at all of them. Like the defense isn't nearly as sure of a thing as before the combine.
I'll say this. I think the defense sucks. I think his defense is a fucking disaster.
It's not good, but at least if he was strong and had the length, then he could grow into it. But now he's like I said, the measurables aren't what you expected. The shot was pretty discouraging all around. I think he shot like 34% on dribble jumpers, 31% on mid-range jumpers, 33% on threes, and 64% or whatever it was from. It might have been higher, like 60s. It was in the 60s.
It was high 60s. Yeah. It was not
from
good.
The line. There wasn't a great indicator out of all of them. The playmaking, I think, is there. I think he has some dribble drive shot creation, but he also gets himself into trouble at times because he's sped up trying to create those opportunities. So you have to kind of like squint and project improvement in all facets. But if he does do that, he can be a pretty well-rounded offensive player. At 16, it becomes a little more intriguing. Yeah. I understand why he's been falling, though.
He's the classic case for me as a guard like that. So good, which is typical for a lot of guards in high school. They're so good that their shooting never catches up to their driving ability and finishing at the rim, layup package, dunk package, whatever they have, because they're so good at that.
Yes.
And with his body type, with the strength that he has up top, that is another reason why you look at him in that way and you talk about just that, where you point that out right there. That's where it has to catch up. That's where the player development coming to whatever team he gets to. That is going to be a real part. And that's why I wanted to follow up and ask you, how much do you think, at least early on, he might have to spend some time with the Blue Coats or in the G League, whoever it might be, just for that very reason?
No, I don't think he's necessarily an immediate contributor. Then again, I don't really believe in young rookies being immediate contributors.
And frankly, neither do the Sixers.
Yeah.
People running the Sixers.
Especially not at 16. If they were that talented and their game was that complete, they'd probably end up being a top 10 pick. But certainly, I think there's a chance he could end up in G League.
Yeah. So, nice player, though. And that, to your point of, when we mentioned the Hinkie part last week where we just randomly talked about everything with the draft, it was the one thing that you mentioned about Hinkie not taking that swing on Giannis. You bring up taking that swing at 16 and where that upside might just be not to the Giannis level.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Not there. Just more
I certainly am not.
No. It's just more of,
Kyle's like the Collier standard. He's like,
whoa, buddy, whoa. Definitely, whoa.
If there are questions about a lot of these guys, as you said, taking a chance on a guy like that seems like that could work out better than some of the others.
Yeah, look, like we can be reasonable about the downside case. I think, as I said, I think the defense is a complete disaster. I think away from the play, he's a ball watcher who lets his guys get away. On ball, he's someone that I was saying to you before the show, Devon. A guy will feint one way, he will lunge hard, and then the guy goes by him, and there's just like no recovery effort.
Kyrie and Luka in that one game where they were.
I don't want to. So listen, he's a teenager. I'm not going to go quite.
No, it just made me think of that though.
But yeah. Now that being said, when I talk to some people I trust on draft stuff, they pointed out that when USC's season was basically over, they had a really tumultuous season. He actually improved and played better defensively at the end of the season when there was nothing to play for as a team than he did earlier in the year. And to me, that feels like a decent indicator. Now, some of that is probably, hey, I went from number one pick conversation to people are talking about me as like 20 to 25 range potentially is where we're seeing him get mocked a lot. I do like that. The other thing with the turnovers, and I mentioned why I'm concerned about the shot and all that. This came up a lot when I watched the turnovers on tape. He is not good at hiding his emotions when he turns the ball over. And there was a lot of like throwing his hands up and a lot of shitty body language. And maybe it was just the team was a disaster for the middle and end stretch of that season.
Yeah.
But that is not something you're getting away with as a point guard at this level. I do think he's a kid that individually would benefit from, you go to a team that's got a longer runway, that can let him play through a lot of ups and downs, that is not trying to compete right now. I think that's better for him individually. I just see the live dribble playmaking upside, and I say there are not really any other guys in this class, or at least in this range in this class, that have that ability to get downhill. And these passes that he's throwing at times are like both hands fucking lasers to both sides of the floor, one-handed passes right in the guy shooting. And so you can see the you can see the upside case for him. It's probably not a super realistic upside case, but I think as I watch, I don't want to see another guy next to Maxey who's just a side to side, can't get by people, the offense stalls out type of player. I want a player, a backcourt guy on this team that can create real rim pressure, get to the rim, generate free throws, do the stuff that they have not gotten from these other guys. And he does that better than any of the other guys in this group. And so that's why I like him, but certainly not like a... There's a reason he went from, hey, he could be the number one pick to 20 or 25. The bookends of his season were very good. He started the season great.
Yep.
He finished the season strong.
Did get hurt.
Did get hurt.
Middle
portion of the season was just kind of a mess. So he's a hard guy to make sense of.
Sean Karp says, Collier reminds me a little of Raymond Felton. I think if things pop
hopefully he
right,
doesn't eat himself.
He could be an
out
all-star,
of the league like Raymond Felton.
But I'm fairly confident he's going to be an NBA starter. That is Sean Karp. And what is this one? Thera Masumi. I don't know. Thera Masumi. Let's just say that one.
The Merce in me.
Okay, I didn't read all that.
That's like me trying to say MBD, DBF.
Thera Masumi. Collier, bad measurements. Not a good vertical athlete. Poor shooter. I absolutely understand why he has fallen.
I would certainly feel much better if he was bigger than 6'2.5"
If he was 6'5" with the 6'8" wingspan, then it's a different combo.
Yeah.
So there's that. I can read everybody, but the names is just, that's a good one. Good call by you, Kyle. Let's go to Derek next. On the next one, and we got to go to another intriguing freshman from Pittsburgh this time as we talk about Bub Carrington, 6'5".
Yeah.
Almost 200 pounds.
Yep.
But just an intriguing
6'8"
prospect.
wingspan.
Yep.
Yeah, good wingspan that's starting to shoot up the board a little bit more. And what do you make of Bub? Well, they already have one. Security. So
shout out to Bub.
Not sure that
Bub.
quite. I think you can have some overlap there. I think you'll be okay.
Yeah.
That's two.
No, I out of this group, I like him quite a bit. Like you mentioned, 6'4" without shoes, 6'5", 6'5.5" in shoes, 6'8" wingspan. Really, really good pull-up jump shooter. Has some playmaking throw in there. Has some pretty good playmaking throw in there. I think he's real creative with the dribble. Gets to his spots. I think he can get a guy on his hip and has the ability to pull up off the dribble, to get into the middle of the floor and dish it out a little bit. Not really great at the rim, and I think he'd have to improve upon that. Not a really great athlete. Not all that strong physically. But in terms of shot making and distribution, I think he can shoot off the catch. I think he can probably bounce between roles a little bit. He has, in this range, probably the most complete package of players who are likely to fall and also have the size to play next to Tyrese Maxey. Has a little bit of hero ball in him. A lot of hero ball in him.
Wait, because this is the first one that I am like on a complete opposite side of you, I think.
A little bit of hero ball. Now, look, I think part of that might have been the team he played for and the situation he was in, but the shot selection right now would probably drive you nuts. He has to grow physically to be a better defender. But I think there's some projectable tools in there where in this range, I have some interest in Bub.
I think he's Karis LeVert.
He might be.
So and look, Karis LeVert at 16, like young Karis LeVert is not a terrible outcome.
I think he has more deep shooting potential than Karis.
I think so too. But my concern, so we talked about it with Brandon Ingram on the high end side as a wing. There's a big difference between can take and make tough mid-range shots, which is where I put someone like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and has to take and make tough mid-range shots.
I agree.
Which is where Ingram is, and it's kind of where I fall on Carrington. You brought up, and I agree, I'm very skeptical of that. He has not been a good finisher inside. Mm-hmm. He is, again, some of this is he's super young. He doesn't turn 19 until I believe it's late July. So he's going to fill out his body. He's got a good frame. You can put some weight on. And some of the issues that he has getting moved off his spot and finishing at the basket, I do think will change eventually. But I think there's a little too much like, I can hit these shots, so I'm going to take 1 million of these mid-range
and these guys
pull-ups
are not. So I'm shooting it.
And fadeaways.
Yep.
And like, look, there's a case to be made that you bring him here specifically. You have Joel, you have Tyrese. He won't have the option to do that as much. You will be funneled into a quick decision-making, quick catch and shoot type role where I do think you can get value from him there. And I understand because of the size, look, not a lot of guys who are 18 years old have the diversity in both mid-range and deep shot making that he has. And so I do like him. I just worry that he's one of those guys that is always going to settle for garbage shots, and he just kind of derails your offense.
And certainly, like, I'm not drafting here based on, do I think he will correct his weaknesses? But there is a little bit of, all right, well, first of all, he's 18.
Yeah.
Made 49% of his mid-range jumpers, even though they were a real tough selection of jumpers. Like, those were not easy. He was carrying a heavy scoring load for them. Has that skill set. If you put him in a new situation, do the hero, and look, the hero bar tendencies are there. I brought him up before Kyle even got to it, so I don't disagree with it.
Yeah.
But if you can put him in a new situation and he is, asked to do something else, can he grow out of that and take his strengths and build upon them? I don't know if he can. I'm not telling you a probability that he will, but just the chance that is there is why I'm still interested in him. Because we are talking about, like, we're not talking about going out. You bring up Brandon Ingram. We're not talking about trading multiple draft picks.
You're just using a pick.
And giving, $30 million this year and then $150 million or whatever it might be in a future contract. You're just using a pick. He's going to make $4 million. It's not the end of the world. I'm willing to take a swing that he might grow out of these tendencies. I do agree. The lack of explosiveness at the rim and the lack of touch around the rim limits his scoring potential somewhat. I'm not looking at him as a potential all-star down the road, but I think there's a chance he could end up popping more here if he can grow out of those tendencies and continue to, you look at his three-point percentage right now, I think he has the range. I think it's just he took a lot of really tough shots that you hope he grows out of. I think the talent is there.
Yeah, I don't even, I believe in him as a shooter. I don't even really care about the percentages. What was he, like 31, 32%, something like that? I don't even care because of the types of shots that he took. But I do care about the shots he took in general, not the threes. The one thing you also brought up, I do think there's some playmaking upside there. And if you're talking about they need to add some passing value at the spots between Joel and Tyrese, he's got a decent chance to be at least a good playmaker. And considering he's bigger than most of these other guys, I think that's a meaningful distinction between him and the rest of the guys in this group. So would not be crazy if they took him, certainly. And he's been from what I had seen and heard, seems like he's one of the big risers in the pre-draft process, getting a lot more buzz over the last month or so. I do think he's probably too young that the Sixers would lean toward.
He's a project.
Lean toward like a 20, 21-year-old rather than him.
But would you go Bub or Dillingham? I'd go Bub.
I think I'd go Bub just because, I mean, even if I probably have stronger belief in Dillingham across the league, but if you're talking about guys who can play and fit on this team, I'd say Bub is a better bet. If it was
just, team agnostic, probably Dillingham, but on this team, I'd probably go Bub.
Yeah.
All right, let's go run quickly through this one. Marquette, point guard. Tyler Kolek.
Our guy, Vince's guy.
Yeah, Vinny likes him. A lot of people do like him. He had a very good career at Marquette.
Sure.
But projection-wise in the pros, he is projected out to be a first-round pick. What do you think of him? Is he a possibility? He might be there, should be there at 16.
Yeah. I would be stunned if he's not there at 16.
But the player, what do you make of the player?
So 6'1", 6'2" wingspan. It's not great.
Yeah.
It's not great. He, I think, will certainly give effort defensively. He will be in the right spot defensively. He has pretty good hands defensively. But there's just a functional limitation when you're 6'1" with a 6'2" wingspan. Mm-hmm. You're going to struggle. And not only are you going to struggle, but now you're going to put them next to Tyrese Maxey. Look, certainly a great playmaker. He can,
he's the leader in the entire NCAA, right? In assists per game.
But I don't think he can play next to Tyrese.
I don't think so either.
And I almost feel guilt. We're an hour into it, so I don't feel that guilty. But I feel like he deserves more than we're going to give him in terms of both time and possibility. It's just not on this team, not for a team that has Tyrese Maxey and needs a player to win now. I just don't think defensively it would work. And also, like, he kind of needs the ball a little more. And he's not quite good enough
to be effective.
To take it out of Tyrese's hands. So
I think he's a end of first guy. Like if you had pick 28 through 30 and Kolek is there and you're a team that has a lot of positions set, you say, I feel pretty good that this guy will have a, 5 to 10 year career as a true backup point guard. And look, he's a good game manager, like understands pace of play in transition, half court. He's a lefty, which is, I feel like is rare for one of, that's actually in my notes. Everyone loves a lefty, but I feel like there are very few lefty backup point guard types. Like that's just a
campaign, baby.
Very specific. Yeah. Campaign is one of the rare ones. He does have good defensive instincts. I do think despite his size that he's a pretty good interior shot maker, like has a good understanding of using the glass with runners, floaters, things like that. But if he's even a one position defender, it's a high end outcome for him, just given the physical limitations. And the other big thing is while he shot better the last couple years, and I think his mechanics as a catch and shoot guy are good, I don't really see the pull up jumper upside with him. His mechanics are too slow there, and he falls not as pronounced as TJ, but he's kind of in that TJ McConnell area where it's a slower load up and he's a little hesitant. And so you can't really afford to be that type of pull-up shooter as a 6'1" guard who is more than likely going to give points back on the defensive end. So if he was, and I think on top of that, I had to go back and look, I think his 3-point volume actually went down over the years. I think when he was at George Mason, he was taking like 6+ threes a game his freshman year, and he was down under 4 the last couple seasons. I do not like to see that. The fact that he's declining in 3-point volume over the years is a pretty big concern for me.
He would be, you draft him for 10 minutes a game, he's running your second unit, and that's about it.
He's Ty Jerome. That's it. That's the type of just you see if you can stick around, make it work, and go from there. All right, 2 more guys. I'll throw one at each of you, and we'll get to them. Let's start off. 2 guys that it looks like, folks, if you probably sitting there like, why haven't they talked about this player or that player? Well, it's because they're probably going to be gone by the time the 76ers pick at 16 unless they move up for one of these 2 players. Kyle, start with you. Reed Sheppard, the other guard that we mentioned a little bit earlier, backcourt mate with Bronny at Kentucky, along with Rob Dillingham. And we're talking about Reed Sheppard here, probably going somewhere in that lottery where the Sixers won't have a chance.
Yeah, I mean, when you shoot 52% from 3, there is no escaping the radar in today's league. And his catch and shoot ability and the shot making is ridiculous.
Effective field goal percentage on catch and shoot. What do you think it is?
I have no idea.
77.1%. And then on top of that, he shot 52.1% on dribble jumpers.
So look, he's not going to shoot 52% from 3 in the league, but the mechanics are outstanding. He gets shots off in tight windows and like
quick, high release point, all of it.
Great release point, quick, can shoot from all over the floor. Here's the bigger thing for me. His feel for the game is so good on both ends of the floor. So great connective passer. He makes a ton of hit-ahead passes in transition, which I love. Like he's not someone like Maxey who give him the ball and goes by people in transition, but he will see the guy leaking out. He'll see the big running down the middle of the floor. He will hit that guy with a pass. I think he's great at that. He's a great, I was talking to you, Devon, before the show, that he reminds me of some of the guys like Nick Batum, who as a decision maker in the half court, if he gets the ball and there's a passing lane for a great shot, he will almost always find it. Like he is just great at making those 0.5 second reads. And then look, if the passing lane's not there, the catch and shoot numbers and the catch and shoot mechanics are so good that he's going to get that shot off, make a shot. So that's great. I also feel better about him defensively than a lot of these other guys that might be better, like vertical or side to side athletes. he's got outstanding hands. He's good with his off-ball positioning. So I don't think he's like a traditional top 10 pick. I think in a different year, maybe he slides a little bit more. But I think if I'm going to bet on one of these guys who's in the like 6'1" to 6'3" size department, give me the guy who shot 52% from three. I just think it's a moot point for the Sixers because I think his floor is like 8 in this draft.
He's in a 3 through 8 range. And I think, quite frankly, if he was 6'4", he'd be in real consideration for the number 1 pick.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, one more. Dalton Knecht, Tennessee. Guy can score the basketball. Polished kind of, you look at him for what he does in the SEC, and he led that Tennessee squad, and he also looks like he's a lottery pick that's going to be out of range. Derek, what do you make of Dalton Knecht on the NBA level?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, I think he's not going to be there. So, quite frankly, like older guy, probably if you're looking for someone who can contribute right away, might be interesting. But then again, I think a lot of teams in that range are looking for immediate contributors. Mm-hmm. Part of the reason why someone like him might end up going higher than you would expect. That's also part of the reason why there might be a lot of trade activity to get into the 8 through 14 range. For the most part, I think he's just not going to be there.
Yep.
Yeah. And look, I think the case for him is pretty simple. He's a 6'6" elite shot maker and can make shots from
everywhere. Basically
all areas of the floor. Was, if not the best, one of the best players in college basketball this past season. So that if he's there, I would sign up for him. Like, I think he's somebody that can fit in a bunch of different lineups. But I think he's probably he'll probably go a little lower than Sheppard if I had to guess, just because the shot making.
But I still think probably 6 to 10 is his range.
Yeah. I think I 10 to 12 is probably the floor if I had to guess.
Yeah, I like him. And if he gets on one of those teams that can find 15 minutes for him and make shots, like you just said, then he'll work out just fine.
Unfortunately, like I said, it seems like everyone in that range is looking for somebody who can step in pretty quickly and fill a role, and he's quintessential for that.
Well, folks, this doesn't end our draft coverage. That just stops at the guards. Tomorrow, we'll get into another position group and talk about, I was going to tell everybody, right? We're going to talk about
wings tomorrow. I see some of these names in the chat. We will be
all over the chat. They have been.
Which kind?
Buffalo.
Okay.
Honey barbecue.
Now this is a topic I can get behind.
There you go.
Hey, Jamie Lynch, PHLY colleague of ours, was talking about. Have you guys been to Union Jacks in Glenside?
Yeah.
They have outstanding wings that he must have gone there over the weekend.
Okay, might have to check that out.
I've not been in a long time, but they are great.
Well, that'll do it for us on the guard side of things. A lot of good stuff from you guys in the chat. And for that, let's get a roll call as we say thank you to everybody.
A lot of people with us today to say thank you to. Thank you to my girl Winona.
She said
always.
Hot and spicy in the wings, Derek. Hot and spicy.
Sean Charp, Eugene Ross,
what
Money
up, Gene?
Marr, Garrett Mello, Heem the Dream.
What up, Heem the Dream?
Who's bringing up Shannon. I believe he will come up tomorrow. I think we probably fit him in the 2-3 category, right? And a lot going on there. The Merce in me, or as Devon said,
I don't even know what I said.
Roll the tape on that one. Eden the remix, Rick Morse.
What up, Rick?
Who else we got here today? Bootzilla.
Boots.
Dave Doer. Remo K.
Remo.
Shout out to Remo. Neil Deaver. You better love somebody.
You better love somebody to love somebody to love somebody.
I believe, I'm only saying this because I think I see a Charlie Murphy avatar. Darkness is in here with us today. You have to say it in that.
That's the only way
in that manner, right? Rupert Pupkin.
What up, Rupe?
The culture is ours. Who else we got? Slade. Philly 007.
What up, Slade?
Provolone John and John Peace. We're Johning out here today.
Like that.
Pause, no Diddy on.
There you go.
Johning out. Skeeter. Wow, that was a bad follow-up to Elliot Vincent. Who else is in here today? Spo Babby.
What up, Spo Babby?
And shout out, as always, to our guy Al. The
What up, Al?
2-minute warning.
What up, Al?
Sean C, Chris B. A lot of initials in here today. Hey, Tyrese Maxey, the franchise himself.
He's in there.
In the building. Thank you to Tyrese Maxey.
What up, Tyrese?
Thank you, everyone, for being here today. If you have not already, hit the subscribe button. Hit the bell icon so you get notifications each and every time we go live. And if you hit the thumbs up button, we'll be talking about wings tomorrow.
Hot and
Maybe
spicy.
chicken wings. Maybe basketball wings.
Food. We should bring in some wings.
Real fast.
Vince, you hear that? I know you're watching because you wanted us to talk about your guy.
Do we get a game 6?
No.
Game 5's tonight?
I think it's over.
All right, it's over. Finals is over. Bree, thank you.
This is my dumbass take. I think the Mavs won by too many points. So now Boston will be ready to go. Because you need to be ready to play game 5.
That's the most first take opinion I think you've ever had.
They should have only won by like 8, and then they would have a chance.
Let me tell you something, Shannon Sharp.
I called it out first.
We'll be back tomorrow as we break down some wings, prospects, and chicken. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Have a good one.
We all silly like the mayor.